Welcome to Assembly Calendar. I'm Ted Flint. With us today, Assemblyman Al Graf, who serves District Number 5, which includes Suffolk County. Assemblyman Graf, nice to see you.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. We're going to be talking about some obviously statewide issues. That's what the program will focus on. And we just want you to tell the folks how difficult it is as a minority member of the Assembly to get legislation passed. I mean, how partisan an atmosphere is it here in Albany?
Well, it's kind of funny. Most people know they're so partisan up here. You have to have a Republican in the Senate to sponsor a bill, and you have to have a Democrat in the Assembly, or they won't let it hit the floor. But what's interesting, as a minority member, that puts you in a very good position because the majority in the Assembly cannot get a Senate sponsor, right, as a Republican. So I become like Monty Hall. Let's make a deal. So I can actually put a bill in, get myself a Republican sponsor, and then hand it off to one of my Democratic colleagues, right? And I'll become number 2 on the bill. But look, I'm just focused on giving good legislation to the people of New York State. And you have to deal with the rules that they've set up. So this is a way that I'm able to do that. And right now I think I have 5 statewide bills that are good for the people in New York State that are being pushed forward. It's an old saying by Harry Truman. It's amazing how much you can get done if you don't care who gets the credit. I'm not up here to pound my chest. I'm up here trying to change things on the state level in order for people to be able to live a little more comfortably. I have one bill right now that deals with domestic violence. I wound up in a Burger King with a woman and her 3 children. The husband's been beating her up for 20 years. But now it transferred to the children. And at first, the abuse was over spanking. But now all of a sudden he goes to a wooden rod and he hits the kid with a wooden rod, leaving welts. She called me. I sat there in a Burger King for hours making sure an arrest was made. The next day I went down to court with her, made sure she got an order of protection to get him out of the house. And what happens is the abusers in these cases, if say they just overspank where the woman gets involved, and in this case she got involved, she wound up with a black eye, all right, and she just tries to keep her family together. After that she said, enough, you're not hurting my children. So what this bill does is actually creates a safe harbor for women, because what the abuser will do is as the abuse escalates, they will look at her and say, her or him, and say, you can't call the police because CPS will take your children away. So what we've done is we've created a safe harbor for women. And the safe harbor, if the woman is not the abuser, if she suffers from domestic violence, or the man, and she's not the abuser, and she is the initial reporter, and she cooperates with authority, then that's not a basis to take her children away. So it removes that tool or threat from the abuser in the household. And hopefully what it will do is create an atmosphere where they don't have to worry about their children and they'll come and report. So it'll stem further abuse. Mm-hmm. So it's a good bill and we're pushing it forward.
That bill of which you speak is Melinda's Law.
Melinda's Law. It's named after the woman that I spent the day in the Burger King with.
Now you're a former police officer, so you have some background in this kind of thing.
Right, and I've been on a lot of domestic violence disputes. I've made a lot of arrests for domestic violence. And what it is, there's a whole thing that works around here. We have battered women syndrome and self-esteem issues, and they isolate them. And so all this is meant to do, there are exceptions with this though. Any sexual abuse doesn't fall under this statute. Prior sexual abuse. Any deformity that occurred because of abuse, that doesn't apply. Or murder where another child was killed and they covered it up. But it's meant to stop some of the abuse before it gets way out of control and the kid winds up dying.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's talk about another issue. This pertains to the energy superhighway and just how prohibitive are the costs on the island for electricity specifically?
Right now, my towns, this affects our entire economy. Right now, you have one town, Brookhaven, pays $451,000 a month. Islip pays $330,000 a month. Sachem School District pays $240,000 a month. Suffolk County pays $1,779,000 a month. So this affects our property taxes. That's not to mention what businesses are paying or non-for-profits are paying. And it's basically killing us. We've been fighting this for a year. We put up a website We petitioned the governor. Then it was shocking that the governor actually, in his State of the State address, came out with this super energy highway. And he had the lines coming from the hydro plants downstate. And everyone on the floor looked at me and said, "That's your bill." And it was exciting. Then all of a sudden the budget comes out. It's not in the budget. So I get up on the floor of the Assembly and I blast the governor for not putting it on in the budget and broken promises. Now, though, since I did that, the governor has come out and said we are going to do the superhighway.
All right, I don't want to cut you off. I don't want you to repeat yourself, too. That was your message on the floor of the Assembly. Let's look at what you had to say then, and we'll come back and comment further with Assemblyman Al Graf.
What this represents is a lot of broken promises on the part of the governor. In my area, everything is directly affected by the cost of electricity. Right now, I have a school district that pays $240,000 a month for electricity. I have one town that pays $451,000 a month. Another town that pays $330,000 a month. And our county's electric bill per month is $1,779,000. So when the governor announced that we were going to have this super energy highway, and then I guess he just forgot to put it in the budget, to say I'm disappointed would be an understatement. What's happening with this state right now, and especially Long Island, is we are becoming the biggest exporter in the country. What we are doing is we're exporting jobs, and we're exporting, the most important, we're exporting our children, because we can no longer afford to live on Long Island because of the price of taxes and the cost of electricity. Now, this was a big announcement by the governor that he was going to put in this superhighway. I guess it's going over the new Tappan Zee Bridge that we're not going to see either. All right? So all I can say is I am truly disappointed, and I think the governor needs to refocus his efforts and start doing things that's going to have an impact on Long Island and or the rest of the state. Now, we're constantly looked at as the piggy bank for New York State. Well, that piggy bank is drying up.
Has the governor, since you said that on the floor, has he refocused his efforts?
Well, he actually came out and he announced that the highway is going to come through. The problem is he stops at New York City. So now we put another petition up, and I'm asking people to go out there and help by signing the petition. And what we're asking the governor is Long Island wants its entrance ramp onto the new energy highway. Right, we have the most outrageous electric rates in the state. And until the governor wakes up and focuses on that, we're not all driving BMWs, we're not all driving Mercedes or Rolls Royces.
That's a perception, though,
Yeah.
I think in a lot of areas.
Right, and it's time for the governor to wake up and smell the coffee. Because as Long Island goes, so does the rest of the state. And he's bleeding us. We're dying from the death of 1,000 cuts. And, you know, hopefully this is a wake-up call to the governor. We did get his attention one time, okay, and I guess during the inception of his new program, he fell asleep once he got to New York City and forgot that Long Island's part of the state. He doesn't have a problem finding out Long Island's part of the state when he's grabbing our wallets out of our back pocket.
All right, let's shift gears a little bit, talk about gender equity. The bathroom bill, as the conference refers to it, lively debate.
Well, it's amazing. You know, and this is one of the reasons that it's important to have representation up here. We have a New York City Democrat who put in a bill that people hate, and they hate it for good reasons. You realize, and one of the things we brought up on the floor, and I think you have the tape, is this would allow in a public bathroom or a public shower. So you go to Jones Beach, you take your 5-year-old daughter into the shower to wash off the salt and everything. A 40-year-old man can walk in and take a shower with you and your wife and your 5-year-old daughter, and he can look like a man. All he has to say is, "I feel like a woman today."
I feel like a woman that day, right.
I mean, it's incredible that they think this is okay.
It's mind-boggling.
And the other thing, if my daughter's playing sports in junior high school, Right? After the sport, she comes in, she takes a shower in the locker room. One of her male classmates can come in and say, I feel feminine today, and take a shower with my daughter. Right? This would allow men into women's bathrooms, into women's locker rooms, into women's showers, and nobody can stop them from doing this.
That's a part of the unintended consequences.
In all honesty, I looked at the other side of the aisle and I said to him, what are you people smoking when you come up with this stuff?
That's right. Well,
it's incredible.
Let's look at some of that debate and the Assemblyman's comments on the floor. Then we're back with Assemblyman Al Graf.
I've spoke to many people in my district. I've talked to them about this bill. And frankly, I haven't met one that wasn't appalled by this bill. And the idea that their teenage daughter will be in a shower, in a locker room, in high school after a sporting event, and that a male that just decides, I feel like a woman today, can walk in there and take a shower with her, this bill, they hate this bill. And as a father of two daughters, I would ask everyone in this chamber to tell me if they would want this to happen if their daughter was bathing or showering in a locker room, where any boy could walk in and take a shower and the school couldn't prohibit that behavior. For that reason, I'll be voting no on this bill. I would encourage everyone else to do the same. Okay, it's a bad bill, and from my perspective, there's no way that this bill should see the light of day. Thank you.
It was essentially a one-house bill, and essentially the same bill that's been introduced every year since 2002. There have been virtually no changes.
Right. Well, what happens is, understand that the minority in the Assembly, our job is to stand up and make sure the Senate's paying attention and saying, listen, this may be coming to you. Make sure it dies in the Senate, because the nonsense that they put through the Assembly sometimes, it's amazing, and they just jam it through. And I refer to the Democrats on the other side as the Borg, okay? And if you ever watch Star Trek, the Borg, they have one collective brain. His name is Shelley Silver, and they vote any way they want it. So any bill that comes up there, even if they don't believe in it, right, they'll vote for it. So our job is to stand up, send flags and everything else, and say, listen to the Senate, this may be coming your way. Make sure you kill it. So basically, we're your first line of defense with some of this legislation. You know, it used to be they send me legislation in my office to ask me to sign on to it, and I can't tell you how many times I'm sitting there reading it and just shaking my head. And I used to just throw it in the trash can. Now I actually started a file in my office that says really stupid legislation. And that file is growing leaps and bounds.
I bet.
It's amazing.
Now, it was an interesting debate. A lot of it, the sponsor, I think he had to stop and pause. He looked as though he was trying to, take some of this in, some of the problems with the bill. Morality aside,
right.
It was a poorly written piece of legislation, has been pointed out.
Well, not according to him. It's the greatest piece of legislation you've ever seen. All right, but
did any of the arguments sink through to him, you think, or? Absolutely
not. He's been putting in this bill. He thinks it's a great idea.
No Senate sponsor, right?
No Senate sponsor. He's not able to defend it. Right. When we talk about the definition that he puts in there, he can't. He just bloviates. So, I mean, we stood up for hours on that bill, debating that bill, beating it down, and it's amazing that people on the other side of the aisle actually voted for it.
It is.
And, my constituents, when I tell them this, they have a fit.
We've got to run. I wish we had more time. Thanks, Assemblyman Al Graf. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Assembly Calendar. We will see you very soon. I'm Ted Flint.